Our next speaker is Chris Armstrong, who's the Wellbeing Program Manager for Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team. Wellbeing is often referred to in terms of benefit reward and attracting talent and looking after employees, but Chris's session is going to take us that one step further. Chris is going to help explore how well-being and human performance complement each other in the working environment. Chris has the enviable task of being responsible for the development and delivery of the team's well-being program, and that's all about optimizing all aspects of health, including physical and mental health and recovery. Chris is absolutely passionate about finding ways in which the team can learn from other domains to really enhance the support and care that's available in the business. Chris holds a bachelor's and master's degrees in sports and exercise science. He's a non-exec director for Manchester Football Association, where he facilitates development of human performance and wellbeing strategy to support grassroots football. Super excited to have you here. Chris, welcome. Over to you.
Superb. Thank you very much for the intro, Stephen, and thank you, Marcus, for the opportunity to speak today. As Stephen mentioned, my name is Chris Armstrong. I'm the Wellbeing Program Manager for Mercedes Formula One team. And today's session, we're going to look to cover wellbeing for human performance. So in terms of this session, what is the intent of the session? We want to make sure that we give an overview of wellbeing and its sort of impact on human performance. We want to look at why Mercedes decided to have a wellbeing program in the first instance, discuss some of the elements that we bring to life here, and consider strategies that we use to support those, not only in wellbeing, but also in terms of human performance. We'll look at the role of employers and sort of employee engagement, and then we'll look finally at how we'd go to implement a wellbeing program now with the sort of 3.5, 4 years experience that we've got in this area. And finally, just understand the impact that wellbeing programs can have. Just a little bit about me, in terms of my background, as Stephen mentioned, I've got a BSc in sport and exercise science and was lucky enough to work in professional cricket for a number of years, both as a performance analyst, sports scientist, and then eventually head of strength and conditioning. I then moved in 2017 to Birmingham City Football Club to be a physical performance coach there, whilst also undertaking a master's in applied sport and exercise science. Then 2019, I was lucky enough to join Mercedes Formula One team to become their first wellbeing program manager, as they embarked on this journey to really embed wellbeing within the team and its culture. And then more recently, I've joined the non-exec directors of Manchester Football Association, giving back to grassroots football with a particular focus around wellbeing there as well. So firstly, I think, in terms of wellbeing and human performance, we want to be really clear around sort of definition and the importance of. So wellbeing here, and I've referenced Loud and Denev in their recent text around wellbeing and policy. It's how you feel about your life, how satisfied you are. So it's very subjective, very specific to the individual, and it's important that we keep that mindset when we consider well-being, particularly with a team the size of ours, where we have multiple people with very different requirements and needs in terms of their personal well-being. And when we look at human performance, it's really around the sort of quality and efficiency and the human contribution to system performance. And then also, relating that to both psychology and physiology, which are important aspects for any wellbeing program. So why did Mercedes Formula One team want to go on this journey with wellbeing? If we rewind the clock, and this predates my time with the team, the Mexican Grand Prix in 2017, it was Lewis Hamilton's 4th Drivers' World Championship that he won at that race, and it was the team's 4th Constructors' World Championship. So it's possible to say that we were building, a really successful team at that point that was really doing well in terms of the Formula One landscape. But already the team had a real eye on the future. In terms of the journey to wellbeing, the team had spent a considerable amount of time looking at reliability. And that's really within the engineering department, making sure that the car is reliable, it's able to finish race weekends and do high mileage. So it was looking at that ability to regularly finish races and put them in a position where they could win. Beyond that, after looking at test and development and regulations around that, it was really about adding performance to the team. That's where we saw significant investment in terms of aerodynamics car performance, and how we conceptualize that in the practice area here. So the team's really focused there on reliability, and then adding performance to that, which is where we've seen the success of winning. And then already the leadership were really future focused as far back as 2017, wanting to come on board with human factors and bringing those to life. How can we enhance, how can we optimize what we'd already got going on, but also make it fit for the future and sustainable. Here we've got a quote from our team principal and Chief Executive Officer Toto Wolff, where he talks about Formula One, marginal gains that we've all heard about, but actually, that we cannot compete at the very limit if you're not pushing in all areas. So for a Formula One team, which is, significantly focused around engineering and performance in that area, to ignore the human piece would be to do a disjustice. So really, again, just focusing on being future-proofed on human performance. It's really important for us that we have a whole team focus. So a lot of the time, whenever I speak to third parties or speak to friends or colleagues, they often ask the first question, what are you doing with the drivers? How do you focus on the drivers? But that's not where the main body of my work is. We have 1,200 people here in the factory, and we know if that 1,200 people take a step forward versus the 2 drivers at the top, we can make a significant difference to performance with this team. So for us, if we can look after the well-being of the 1,200 factory team members, the 150 race team members who travel the world regularly, we can really have a big impact on performance. So that's really important for us, and I'm regularly thinking about ways that we can support the whole team here, regardless of role, responsibilities. It really is about optimizing their own well-being. So in terms of the benefits of sort of positive well-being on human performance, it's possible to say that the weekend, apologies, where the weekend can be.
Sorry to interrupt, Chris, but we might be losing a bit of the sound occasionally. I wonder if it might help the bandwidth if you turn your video off.
No problems. Hopefully that'll be better now. Can you hear me okay there, Stephen?
Yes, can hear you fine, thanks, Chris.
Super, I'll continue. So yeah, we're really intent on trying to improve productivity, engagement and resilience within our team. We've seen research there that an increase in 1 point in engagement can really increase those value-added per hours, 6.6%. So 1 point would be almost an added value of around about 20% with a team member. I mean, that's a significantly large effect. So, our wellbeing program isn't just about driving sort of work out of our team members. Often it's about, it's just the right thing to do, but we can draw a line and clearly come back to seeing the improvements in human performance as a result of people being given the opportunity to improve their wellbeing. So our wellbeing program has a really clear statement of intent. This sort of leads back to the culture and the leadership that we have here. But this statement of intent really points out that the program is focused around physical well-being, mental well-being, and also the recovery of the team, underpinned by that psychological safety, which we've already heard speakers talk around this morning. We want to give every team member the opportunity to improve their own state of well-being. Doesn't matter where they're starting from. So, in a group of 1,200 people, it's really obvious that we're going to have a large spectrum of needs and requirements from a wellbeing standpoint, but we want to give them the opportunity wherever they start from to improve and optimize their own personal wellbeing. We intend to do that through education. Apologies. Apologies there. We intend to do that through education, through diagnostics, and development plans, all making sure we foster an environment that's really conducive to well-being. And then it's all trying to tie it back as well to the team's focus, which is eventually around winning and sustaining our championship winning capabilities. So in terms of elements of well-being for human performance, we've got this really clear framework, 3 clear pillars around physical, mental, and recovery. To look at these in a little bit more detail, we have some clear deliverables, particularly around physical well-being. So for instance here, we have annual health assessments available for all team members. On an annual basis, every team member has the opportunity for their own individual health assessment, and we've seen significant success with this. A number of team members have been diagnosed, unfortunately or fortunately, depending how you look at it, with sort of non-communicable illness, and as a result have been able to receive treatment and then come back to work in a fit and healthy state. And we've seen really good examples of this recently, where team members have been supported through those instances as well by the leadership to make sure that they get a really good return to work. We have great occupational health support. So, looking at all the kind of things that you safety professionals will be well versed in, but that occupational health support is readily available to all team members. We have an on-site gym and performance coaches available again to all team members, no matter what the sort of level of performances that you're coming in with, or sort of your physical well-being state. There's something for everybody there. We have good health and education around that as well. So whether it's available from our performance coaches, guest speakers who come in to speak on certain topics around our framework, to make sure that that's continually reinforced. We have physiotherapy support available on site, so we can make sure that that's readily available for team members. And this isn't a sort of hidden benefit that is just called upon when people are injured. It really is readily available, so it's very proactive. And finally, the medical support that's available 24/7 worldwide. So whether you're a team member who travels or a team member who's based in the UK, that medical support is available to you 24/7. When we look at mental well-being and strategies for improving and optimizing, it's really important that we have a good sort of menu of interventions available. All team members induction have mental well-being training, and that is specific to them, whether they are an employee, whether they are a leader, so they're actually being upskilled in the opportunities and sort of capability to support their team members. We also have specific leadership training around mental well-being that's part of our leadership program. All team members have access to mindfulness programs. We have a number of mental wellbeing champions as well that are trained in-house with our bespoke mental wellbeing training education, which really does talk to the needs of the team. We have mental skills workshops focused around performance under pressure, really sort of grounded in academic science there around psychology, but brought to life for the needs of the team. And I think that speaks a little bit to the authenticity that is a key sort of structure of today's program. So really authentic support being available there. As many companies have, we have employee assistance program, and that's readily made available and sort of signposted to all team members. And then likewise, professional healthcare support is readily available for all. So team members can gain quick, ready access to both therapy and support wherever that's needed. In terms of recovery, this is one that is very bespoke to the team. We want to make sure that team members get optimal rest. So that optimal rest is making sure that they have appropriate time between spikes in workload, whether that be at the weekend, whether that be between shifts, or whether it be the sort of seasonality of a Formula One calendar where we have, we may have double header weekends, we may have triple header weekends, there might be flyaways. So making sure we can really program in some optimal rest there. Likewise, we want to make that rest really intentional. So making team members aware of what the best things are that work for them. So for some, an intentional rest program, they may get their rest and recovery by going to the gym. They might get their rest and recovery by walking out with friends. It might be socializing, reading. there's all different things. So we've run a number of workshops on that. In terms of sleep, sleep's been a real challenge for us as a team. As I'm sure you can imagine, team members traveling, working on different time zones from both in the UK and also when abroad traveling, that can bring significant sleep challenges. And we've been lucky enough to work with some sort of worldwide specialists in delivering education, support and resource to our team in that area. In terms of nutrition and hydration, we have a restaurant on site here that provides a really good menu of nutritional support to the team that again is focused around the needs of the team. It's all really well indexed on what your own personal sort of intentions are with your well-being, whether you're looking to lose some weight, you may be looking to put some weight on, you may be looking to sort of improve your concentration in the afternoons, reduce your cholesterol levels. There's all different things there. And that again, it's all tied into our health assessments as well. So off the back of the health assessments that every team member gets annually, they will then get supported and nudged into the different interventions and education that's available readily on site. Finally, in terms of travel support, we have a great travel team here that work really closely with the team to make sure that any travel, whether it be for a race weekend or for business, it is done in the best way possible for the members of the team. So that might be getting certain flights that really help with jet lag. It might be making sure that the support is there around transfers, around hotel provisions when they arrive at different locations. And we regularly feed back on that as well. So at the end of every race weekend, we'll sit down as a wellbeing group, and we have numerous working groups to make sure that we're regularly getting feedback in those areas. So just trying to tie the link now between sort of wellbeing and performance. It's really important that we look at this. So, as we mentioned previously, wellbeing is really subjective. If we were to take a small snapshot of the group here that work, within that 1,200 people, everybody will have really different needs. Some team members will, be sub-elite Ironmen in terms of, their weekend activities, and will be looking to really push performance in their sort of extracurricular performance. But then some people, team members, will have a lot more focus around family, around their ability to look after people at home. And that's really important that we consider all the way along that spectrum, the specific needs of team members. So really putting that snapshot and lens over there. We'll look at job satisfaction, engagement, things that have high positive effects and things that have low negative effects. Reading's a good example of that. But all these different things then play into, better health. Wellbeing predicts better mental and physical health. Okay, so how can we support in that area? Looking at regulation, okay, so self-regulation. We need to make sure that team members are really self-aware, able to, control themselves during difficult moments, but also being able to control themselves during really positive moments as well. So that real self-regulation piece there. In terms of motivation, we want to make sure that team members, have really good motivation. Well, one thing that's really good about a Formula One team is that every other weekend you've got some feedback on how we're doing as a whole team, but then also breaking that down into sub-departments, teams, and even just smaller groups. How are we measuring our performance and our ability to solve complex tasks? Looking back to the previous slide where we're talking about nutrition, how can we make sure that we are eating well so that late afternoons we're still able to do these complex tasks when we might be feeling a little bit more tired? And that fires in there with creativity as well. So making sure that we can really be creative. Okay, this is high performance environment where innovation is really one of our values. So making sure that we've got that ability to be creative in our workspace. I think we all know that positive relationships, we look at sort of social cohesion. It's really important that people have positive relationships at work. And when we have difficult moments, like some of those that I've already mentioned with health assessments and some of the outcomes there, making sure that we've got positive relationships in the workplace to support us in those difficult moments really, really are key for wellbeing. We make sure we see lower absenteeism, lower turnover, and also that we can really attract talent. We want team members or external sort of potential employees to really want to come and work here, and we see our wellbeing program as an opportunity to really support on that. Finally, pulling over into the performance piece, it's really important to see, individualized and organizational performance. Okay, when we're building a business case, and I know Marcus was talking about this earlier, okay, it's important that we can see productivity and even profitability really sort of improving. It's clear to see, for instance, that better health, motivation, and creativity can have a positive impact on overall organizational performance. And that can be volume of productivity or the bottom line. But that becomes incredibly attractive as an argument for proactive wellbeing support to be visible and readily available within the workplace. So just to touch on that there, and probably support Marcus's case in terms of building a business case for wellbeing. There's been two really clear studies here, and these are, they're well established now and from a little while back. So I think with the ready investment that we've seen over the number of years in wellbeing, this would probably be even further supported now. But the COOP and the Hero Health Wellbeing practice studies have clearly shown that those companies that invest more in their health and wellbeing provision have significantly higher stock value performance. So, it really is to the financial people within organisations. This shouldn't be ignored, and there certainly is benefit from investing in wellbeing and being certainly authentic around that. So, in terms of the role of employers, in my experience, it's really important that the employers are proactive. As I've already mentioned, Mercedes Formula One team was looking at wellbeing well before deploying a program, a number of years ago now. So they were really sort of making sure that we were going to be future-proofed. But as previously mentioned as well, that relationship between work and wellbeing is complicated. So looking at factors such as reward, working relationship, hours and flexible working, making sure that work's interesting and that people have purpose is really, really important. And I think that's something that we as a team do really well here in terms of communication. So we make sure that in any of these topics, we're regularly communicating so that people are understood around the purpose, the vision, the mission, the intent of the team, and that we really are well aligned. The book in the right-hand corner there is a new text from Gabriella Rosa Kellerman and Martin Seligman. It's called Tomorrow Mind, and looking at sort of thriving at work with resilience. Now, there's one chapter in this book that I really like that sort of covers the role of employers and takes us away probably from the social welfare tradition where organisations would be heavily focused around reducing smoking and drinking alcohol within their populations, to more of a learning and development approach, and then more recently into being really proactive organisations. And I think the third sort of item there, the challenges of a disjointed approach, is something that we really avoid here as a team. I think historically and at times, wellbeing has been a HR function within the team, and that can often lead to a little bit of a them and us sort of situation. But here as a team, and it's interesting that I sit as part of the health and safety team, having not been a health and safety professional per se, and that health and safety team sits as part of our HR team. I'm lucky enough to work with Stuart Hughes, who was a big visionary in terms of bringing wellbeing to Mercedes Formula One team. And that sort of proactive approach allows us to really build into our sort of safety culture as a whole. So really, really important there to make sure it's proactive and it's authentic. But with that, and we've already touched on the sort of requirements of the employers, it really is important that the employee plays their role as well. You can see in this Sanford matrix here that we really want to be reaching for that top right, have high support and high challenge. And I think if I'm completely honest, this is the first organisation that I've worked in where I've really seen that come to life. We have a really big culture around see it, say it, fix it, making sure that we analyse any processes and not the person when things go wrong, so that we can learn and progress every day. And that's part of our innovation culture. I see this with our health and safety team every day, and they constantly strive to make the environment not only safer, but more efficient in the way they practice. And I think, just to recap, in a team such as Mercedes Formula One, for us to continue to be high performing, we must seek that high challenge and high support to constantly drive that innovation and performance. We must readily look for feedback and also act upon it. And that's something that within our wellbeing program, we're always looking to do. We're always looking for feedback. We have a number of working groups. I have a working group that supports me with the wellbeing program that has individuals from across the whole organization. And we meet on a bi-monthly basis to look at any information, any data, any feedback that's coming in, and then hopefully act upon it so that we can deliver a better program in the future. Likewise, we have a wellbeing group that works with our race team to look at some of the specific challenges that they face with traveling the world. So just coming to sort of implementing the wellbeing program now. I know Marcus covered some of this earlier. In our experience, sort of 4 years into the program, our learnings would really focus around these 3 key areas. So if you're looking to implement a wellbeing program for the first time within your organization, we'd want to make sure that we've got a really clear needs analysis. From that, we can go away and develop a really focused plan. And then finally, we can communicate that readily within the organization to make sure that it really does do what it needs to do. This is really bespoke to us in terms of being an organization that is continuously looking to develop. And I think that's something that any organization should really look to aspire to. So in terms of this sort of needs analysis, it's really important that we consider our population. Who are the stakeholders? So who are the key people? And we're lucky here that when our wellbeing program was first being sort of thought of, that we had support from the top. So our leadership team were really clear, authentic, and intentional around building something that was fit for purpose. From there, we went away and looked at the demographics, the size, sub-communities. So, an example of a sub-community here would be our night shift workers or our shift pattern workers who have very different requirements. Say, for instance, a desk-based employee who works 8:30 till 5:30, or likewise a race team member who travels the world regularly for 23, 24 races a season. Also look at the location. So that can be as sort of granular as the office space in which they're working, or even looking at race team members and the travel that's involved with that, but making sure that we consider all those things in the population box. Then it's about really considering those population needs. So that environment, what are the challenges they face? We already mentioned shift workers and night shift workers. There may be particular sleep challenges there. We look at benchmarking. So how can we compare ourselves to other organisations and other similar communities? An example of that would be when we look at our health assessment data. We don't just look at our health assessment data for our organisation. We'll often look for anonymous feedback and academic rigour in terms of making sure we can benchmark that against best practice to see where we really stand. And then finally, workplace factors. So the particular needs or roles. Okay, so for instance, if I'm an operational team member, the requirements of myself versus someone who's desk-based would be very, very different. We'll look at any pre-existing data. So within any organisation, I'm sure you have a wealth of information on your teams and staff, making sure that we've got all of that in front of us, making sure that we've got any health data that's readily available to us. Considering what utilisation of current services that exists. So if you've got employee assistance programs, medical insurance, or any occupational health involved already, what's the utilisation of that looking like? Where are the numbers? Where are the real cases, and where are the trends to make sure that you're providing a program that really does suit the needs of your team and isn't just a box exercise. The employee survey. We have an employee survey that is of quite a regular cadence, looking at quarterly cadence there to make sure we're getting regular touch points around what people are thinking, not only of the wellbeing program here, but also of their engagement, their leadership, their support, their role clarity, all these different things, and they're all pieces of data that we can use to support the reasoning around what we're going to do with our wellbeing program. Once we've got all that information in place, it's really important then that we go away and we develop a really clear plan. And earlier I sort of flashed up on the screen our statement of intent. This is really, really important to us. So anytime that I sort of have a new intervention idea, I receive some feedback from a team member, we'll always go back to our statements of intent and our framework and see if it matches up against that. So in that sense, we've got a really clear wellbeing model. We know that our wellbeing model is focused around physical, mental, and recovery. And from that, we can have a real priority that we should go and make a sort of intervention in that space. So if you're new to this and you're looking to implement or build a program, really consider what is important to your team. It may be that recovery is not appropriate for your organization. It may be that you need social or financial, which are other common pillars that we see in the wellbeing space, to come into there. But once you've done that, select and build that model. Start small and really build out from there. Then you want to consider what your interventions are. So in terms of deliverables, is it lunchtime lectures? Is it development plans? Is it education programs? Is it supporting your leadership to make sure that they can support their team? But having a look at how you want to deliver into your team. Look at the scale you want to deliver at. We often, whenever we've got a new intervention here, we always want to make sure that we condition it really well. So we'll trial it with a small cohort, get some feedback, trial it out with a slightly bigger cohort, making sure that we've got people from all areas of the team so that we gather as much feedback as possible. Once we've done that, we'll then look at how we're going to deploy, and then hopefully look at a sort of measured effect off the back of it. So what impact is that having on the data that we see, whether it be health assessments? For instance, if off the back of our health assessments annually, we've seen an increase in cholesterol levels, we may then go and speak to the chefs in our restaurant. We may do some education around the impact that physical activity, better nutrition can have. And then we'll look at that impact year on year. And we can see sort of annually the difference in terms of performance that we're bringing there. Likewise, our sort of employee survey will give us an opportunity there to get any feedback from our team as well. Then finally, once you've developed the plan, you've got to think about the rollout. How will you deliver it to the team? Okay, often, team members may be working from home, they may be working in different environments or away from your office if you've got multiple sites. How will you make sure that that delivery is consistent to all team members? How will you also make sure that it's really clear on whose responsibility the program is? Do you have a wellbeing program manager? Do you have somebody who can deliver that regularly? Or is it the responsibility of, for instance, safety reps? Is it the responsibility of team leaders? And we can look at that and make sure that we're really clear. Finally, in terms of communication, how do you make it really specific to your team? Do you have a brand in mind for the wellbeing program? For instance, ours here is the Peak Wellbeing Program, designed to make sure that everybody can optimize their own wellbeing. But how do you really make it specific to your team? How do you make it speak to your team members? How do you engage with those people? So are there regular touch points within the working week for your team members where you can regularly engage and have a touch point with them? And can you feed your wellbeing program into that, whether it be newsletters with the opportunity to signpost, whether it be team meetings, whether it be whole organization meetings, company briefings? There's lots of opportunities where you can drop information in around your wellbeing program. Also, where do they find info? Okay, so there needs to be a sort of readily available service. We here have, regular intranet updates around our wellbeing program. We've got people also who, whether it's our performance coaches in the gym, whether it's myself, who are readily available, our mental wellbeing champions, to offer support, guidance, and signposting to team members. Finally, in the communication area, it's really important that you align it to the team culture. So for us, it's really around sort of sustaining our human performance over the long term, optimizing our human factors, so that we can perform as a Formula One team to the best of our ability to go and win races and world championships. Finally, in terms of responsibilities, so what are the role of leaders? What are the role of the individuals, and who's accountable? So, are conversations happening regularly in one-to-ones around wellbeing, or is it just task focused? So often trying to get the leaders to come back, ask really positive questions so that they can offer support and really understand the needs of their teams. Finally, the role of individuals is, we've already touched on that sort of high support, it really is important that team members are open to having conversations and feel that the environment, we've talked about psychological safety on a number of these discussions this morning, that psychologically safe environment really is optimized, and that comes from the leaders, comes from individuals, and really is the accountability of all. Finally, in terms of a wellbeing program, it's no good just to go and deploy something and hope that it works. Really important that we take feedback as well. So we're constantly reviewing against our statements of intent, reviewing what we're doing, what we're delivering, what does the engagement look like, how many people are turning up to events, how many people are engaging with any sort of research or education that we're putting out there. And then finally evaluating that impact. What do people think about things that happened or education that was received? How do people receive that information, and what was the gut feel? And we can take all that information, whether it's from our working groups, whether it's from our employee surveys, or just one-to-one feedback with myself, and we can take that back into our needs analysis, which is regularly happening. So I already mentioned the Wellbeing Working Group that we run. So on a bi-monthly basis, we're taking feedback and throwing it back into our needs analysis so we can constantly revolve and refine. Finally, just to look at the sort of current position of our wellbeing program. Peak Wellbeing for us is well established within the team as a program after 3.5, almost 4 years now. We know that engagement has a really positive, we know that engagement has a significant positive relationship with overall health and wellbeing, particularly mental wellbeing, so sort of a 0.8 variable there, and social wellbeing again 0.6. So we know that our engagement is positively being impacted by our wellbeing program. We know it's a big part of our MGP culture, and we have strong engagement scores, which you can see here below. So sort of 8.1 is our current score. We know we've seen a plus 0.3 improvement since August the 1st. And then compared to the sort of technology benchmark with our survey provider, we know that we're doing really well in terms of organisational support, physical well-being, social well-being. Whilst we're above the technology benchmark with mental well-being, we still have some work to do there as well. And I think that's a good example that we're not always going to rest on our laurels. We always want to improve here. So we're always looking for opportunities to improve. And finally, we have a good wellbeing infrastructure in place. But as with anything, we want to continue to improve. Thank you all for listening. You can scan that QR code if you want to take my contact details and ask me sort of any questions. Obviously, I'll be taking questions in a second as well, but I just wanted to also sort of reference the 2 books that I've mentioned in this presentation. So Tomorrow Mind by Kellerman and Seligman, and also Wellbeing Science and Policy by Layard and Nev, so coming out of the Oxford Research Wellbeing Centre. But really good resources there to look around sort of resilience, positive psychology, and also the sort of wellbeing science and policy, which has most recently made me really sort of look at the different lenses that I place over a wellbeing program at the moment. But thank you for listening.
Chris, thank you ever so much. So insightful. I've written a whole host of observations from that, so really appreciate that. As you can imagine, there were a lot of questions that have come through. I'll pick on a number, if I can do, in the allotted time we've got. Chris, just get us started. Can you think about what strategies, in addition to one-to-ones, have you also found that are really effective in making individuals accountable and to affect behaviour change?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I mean, one of the things that we've done out of the back of our assessments is trying to encourage team members to have sort of accountability partners. So, when I get my health assessments results back, for instance, after a week or so, I would then want to go and share some of that information through a development plan and make sure that I can go away and have the support of my team as well to make sure that I'm achieving those goals. So accountability partners is one example. I think making sure that team leaders, management are also making sure that this is something that's a priority for them. So, within the one-to-one conversations, within team meetings, making sure that people feel, included and that this is a priority for them. A good example, we did a workshop with a leader around sort of inclusive meetings, making sure that team members felt that they were being heard. So for instance, if I was a team member who was fairly introverted and didn't often speak up in team meetings, we did some workshops with our leaders to show them how they could work with those team members, whether it be collecting information beforehand, looking at the communication methods that those team members really appreciate. But we felt that had a really big impact on well-being as well for the individual. So yeah, just trying to find different solutions, I think, for different needs.
Thank you, Chris. How do you currently measure? I mean, we talked about some of the measurables within that. Can you just build out on some of those points around the measurables? Who takes responsibility for the measurement of your overall wellbeing program?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I suppose the responsibility of the measurement piece lies with me in terms of collecting all that data. So we will collect data from our health assessments, we'll collect data from our employee surveys, from any intervention that we have, we'll always have feedback. So whether that's in the form of a questionnaire, depending on which community is it we're going after, sometimes it's just verbal feedback. But that will then all go into, firstly, HR meetings. So we'll have a HR dashboard meeting every month where my wellbeing data will be shared, much the same as sort of our health and safety data will be shared. And then that will be then further shared with the sort of management committee within the team, and we'll receive feedback on sort of work there that we can go and take forward. So I think there's really clear lines of communication throughout the team. But also, there's other filters to that, whether it be our working groups, so getting data and feedback from them, community working groups, whether that be around inclusivity, whether that be around race team, to make sure we're getting that data in and then we're actually actioning off the back of it as well.
I love that. And in terms of the practicalities of that, Chris, because I can imagine you've got multiple data sets telling you different parts of the story. I suppose, how do you practically manage that on the ground? Do you have a project plan which help you keep on track in terms of putting all those respective pieces together? How does that work?
That again is a good question. So we've got really clear data sets. We share them at regular points, so the sort of cadence of those meetings is really clear. So whether I'm presenting to our safety steering committee, our wellbeing working group, our HR team, or our management committee. But if I'm completely honest, the data won't change that much in terms of the sort of data that we're presenting. It's probably just the level of data. So with my working groups, with my leader, my sort of manager, we'll go into a lot more granular detail. But at the sort of management committee level and the safety steering committee level, we'll be really clear around, the sort of more high level data. So what does the engagement look like? Where are we shifting the needles? And what are the key takeaways from our health assessments on an annual basis?
Brilliant, love that. And how have you quantified engagement into points?
Sorry, could you just repeat that one?
How do you quantify engagement into points? You referred to the points system earlier on.
So engagement really is twofold really. So we've got engagement measured via how many people are actually turning up. So for instance, with our health assessments, through speaking to the third party who provide our health assessment diagnostic service for us, they often see in a similar setting to ours around an uptake of about 25–30% of the organisations that they survey. With our team, we're up at 70–80% on an annual basis. So we've got particularly high engagement in that area in terms of people wanting the diagnostic piece. But then with other services, whether it be our employee assistance program, attending, whether it be education sessions, we're just looking at the engagement there in terms of attendance. And then finally, in terms of the annual survey, we've got real clarity around the engagement of our team over.
Lovely, thanks, Chris. One final question, and quite a key one actually, given where you are now in terms of the maturity of your program, and importantly, how much of
but then also in the subsections of sort of wellbeing. Stephen, I can't hear you there.
Apologies. Yeah, I think one of our bad.
I think I've got you now.
Well, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Oh, fantastic. Apologies, Chris, I interrupted you because I thought you might have finished, and then I think your bandwidth had dropped down. So sorry, you were just closing off.
And then finally, sorry, my last point was around employee survey. So we have really clear data around not only employee engagement overall, but also in the wellbeing space, and then in the subsections of wellbeing around mental wellbeing, physical wellbeing, social wellbeing, and also sort of organisational support.
Awesome. One final question. Again, this I think kind of brings a lot of this together. Given where you are now in terms of building a really informed approach around wellbeing, what were your pain points? What were the challenges you had at the very outset when you were looking to build your program from scratch?
That's a great question. I think firstly was sort of space, infrastructure, and time. So as something completely new to the team, it was finding the space to do these kind of things, particularly in terms of time. I'm sure you can imagine sport and Formula One, is very task focused. We really need to make sure that things are happening on time. So often getting that time back so that we could do things and being really efficient around those is a priority for us as we move forwards now. But in terms of the real challenges from a wellbeing standpoint, there's things around sort of physical activity, sleep, and also mental health. And I think that goes hand in hand with the sort of pandemic that we've been through. And we'll probably track along with society on that front.
Wonderful. Chris, thank you ever so much. Really, really insightful. I love talking with organizations that have gone on this long journey around developing effective programs. Love what you talked about today. Loved everything you're doing. Brilliant. Keep up that brilliant work. Thank you.